Hey y'all, happy Friday. Congratulations, you've made it through 2 whole days of grueling school. So thank you for sticking with me. We have another lesson today on percents. It's going to look a lot like yesterday. We're going to have some book time, and then we're going to jump over to Delta Math. Okay. So yesterday we started talking about percents. When we have a number, if we want to find a percent of that number, right, we have to do a little bit of math, turning that percent into a different number to find that new number. Okay. Today we're going to be looking at problems that are similar but not quite the same. Okay, so if I had this problem yesterday, 50% of 200 is what, right? Yesterday we talked about how we can turn this number into either a fraction, 50 out of 100. Remember, percent has cent in the word, right? 100 cents in a dollar, 100 years in a century. Cent means 100. So 50 parts out of 100. It's a way for us to look at a part of what we're starting with. Okay. We can also look at this with decimals, right? 50% as a decimal is 0.50. And we can kind of do our work that way. Okay. Today, we're looking at problems that are similar. Okay. This one here says 200 is 50% of what? I used all the same words. I used the same numbers. So the problem's the same, right? Not quite. Okay. These problems can get tricky because you really have to pay attention to what these problems are looking for. That problem on the left told us that we were starting with a total of 200 and we were finding 50% or half of it. Okay. The answer here would be 100, right? 50% of 200 is 100, right? It's half of 200. Okay, but over here, this problem had told us that 200 is 50% of what number? Okay, so this time it tells us that the 50% here is 200, and it's asking us what the whole thing is here. The answer here is 400, and the answer here is 100. And I was able to make you do very different math just by kind of moving the numbers around and moving around the words, okay? And these can be really hard, right? It's really hard to pick through and figure out what these questions are asking. So we have to be really careful. Okay, we're going to do a couple examples. We've got Pick'em. It's going to look a lot like yesterday with Delta Math, but I want us to do a couple in our boat books first. Okay, first one is this one. 215 is 40% of what? Okay, so basically it's telling us that we have some number, and when we take 40% of that, we end up with 15. So yesterday I talked about how important these problems are to kind of think first about what number we would expect. Okay, 215 is the 40%. It's that piece of the pie. So do we expect the number that we come out with, the whole thing, to be smaller than 215? That doesn't really make sense here, okay? We expect this number to be bigger, and if this is only 40%, that's not even half. We expect our number to be somewhere around 500, right? It's going to be way bigger than 215. So let's make sure we have the math skills to get there, okay? Same thing as yesterday. We're going to have to think about 40% in a little bit different way, okay? And we'll come back to that in a second. But basically what we're saying here, yesterday we had a number and we were multiplying it by a percent to get a new number, okay? The problems today, you have to kind of think what goes where. We still have a percent, so that can stay there. But do we have our original number? We actually don't, okay? So this is our unknown. This is our x. And then we're multiplying that by 40% to get this new number, which is 215, okay? And this is one of those skills where we really have to have a good handle on one-step equations that we worked with before. This problem here isn't quite ready for one-step equations yet because we need to turn this into either a fraction or a percent, right? Or it's fraction or a decimal. So this is either 40 out of 100 or 0.40. Okay, when I rewrite that, I get x times 0.40 equals 215. And now I can just use my calculator to get my answer here, okay? If I do 215 divided by 0.4, I get 537.5. Okay, does that answer make sense? It does, because this problem asked us to use percents in a little bit different way, right? Instead of giving us the number that we started with, it gave us the number that we ended with and asked us to work backwards. So we have to be a little bit more clever when we're solving these ones. Okay, if you don't want to use decimals, that's okay. The fractions will work here too. Okay, if I go back to 40 over 100 here, you can either turn this into a decimal using your calculator, or you could multiply both sides by 100, divide by 40. You're going to get that exact same 537. I can't remember quite what it was, but you're going to get that exact same number. Okay. So like I said, these are similar to yesterday, right? We started with, let me jump back a couple slides. We started with this basic equation, right? To find a percent of a number, we get a new number, but it asked us to fill in things a little bit differently. Okay, so let's do one more. 4 is 3% of what? Okay, again, we don't know the number that we're starting with. It gives us 3%. Okay, and it tells us that that number that we get out the end is going to be 4. Okay, looking at this, 3% is really small, right? That's a very, very small amount. And this number here, to take 3% of it and get 4, like this number has to be quite a bit bigger than 4 if we're going to get 4 at the end when we're only looking at 3%. Okay, so we can do this math, same thing as before. We either need to do this with a fraction. This is 3% or 3 out of 100. Or we can turn this into a decimal. And I want you to be really careful turning this into a decimal. If I wrote 0.3, that's actually not 3%. That's 30%, okay? So if we want to use a decimal, that's totally fine. We just need to make sure we write 0.03 to get our answer here. And same thing as before, I'm going to end up with x times, and you can do it with fractions or decimals. I'm going to do this one with fractions. 3 over 100 equals 4. Multiply both sides times 100. We're going to get x times 3 equals 400. Divide both sides by 3. We get 133.33. Okay, and that number goes on forever. You can put a bar over the top or just round to 100th like that. Okay, once you are done with this, I'd like you guys to take a peek on the next slide. We've got a quick round of pick 'em. Pick one of the problems, solve it, make sure you've got this down. If you get it wrong, I want you to try another one until you can get one of these right. Pop into the room if you need some help with these. This is a really foundational skill, and understanding percents is something that you're going to do when you leave tips on checks, when you think through sales tax, right? This is the kind of math that is going to kind of follow you the rest of your life, even if you don't go into engineering or teaching math or being a doctor or one of the professions where you need a lot of math. This is like really foundational math, pretty much no matter what you do. Okay, there's going to be another video in a couple slides. I'll check in with you guys then.